Welcome to Worldwide Wisdom right here today as we share the wisdom of today's Torah portion with all over the world. And what is the big deal with Abraham? The question is, what's the big deal about Abraham? So we call Abraham the first Jew. He's our patriarch. But really, what's the big deal? Is it just that he came first? Is it just that he was born before us, that's what makes him great? Can you think of anything else that makes him extraordinary? Does anything come to mind, folks?
Monotheism.
Okay, so he taught monotheism. Okay, fine. Very good. Abraham introduced monotheism to a world that should have known about monotheism because Abraham was just 10 generations from Noah, who lived in a time when God destroyed the world for paganism and corruption. And he was 10 generations before Adam, who had created the world on a one-to-one basis. So in other words, a world that had gone mad, that had lost its mind, that had sunk into klipa, which is what we discussed last week, had descended into superficial perceptions of reality, where they began to worship the hand that feeds it, as opposed to the person behind the hand that feeds it, right? Which is the source of idolatry. Okay, so is there anything else about Abraham that we can... Oh, so Shabsi says that he was a true chassid. A true chassid. Now, we're becoming more personal now, because I have to tell you that when it comes to monotheism, I think that to worship idols, you've got to be out of your mind. I mean, I don't know if you disagree with me on that or not, but if you're actually going to worship idols, if you're going to look, obviously on the most literal level, which is worshiping a piece of wood or metal or steel, right, or a human being for that matter. But then, but where idolatry gets a little slippery is when you start identifying yourself by a human being, such as Donald Trump, or identifying yourself by a political party like the Democratic Party. Do you know people like this?
Football idolizing.
You don't know anybody like this, right? So this is where idolatry becomes very personal, where people are like, oh, well, this person won the election, therefore life is going to be good, or therefore this is the end of the world. That's idolatry. That's the belief that a person has a power over you. We don't believe in that nonsense, in that bubamaisis. You know people that walk around by defining themselves by their status, by their car. Do you know people that define themselves by their country club? Do you know people that feel that they really define themselves when they lose their money? What happens?
That's what I find. The end of the world.
You commit suicide. It's over. It's not to live for.
You have idolatry too, worshiping money.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a big deal. And I mean, right there, you got Abraham as a big model. So I don't want to downplay what you said, which is a very big deal. Monotheism. The fact that you're able to look at an election and say, look, yeah, I voted for this one, or I voted for that one. But at the end of the day, ich werde nicht zerkratzt. I'm not twisted into a pretzel. Why? Because I know that the master of the universe is the one that's controlling all the details, right? And that the president of the United States is just the axe in the hands of the wood chopper. I don't get stressed out from the axe when I'm friends with the wood chopper, right? That's one deal. Now, you're saying that Abraham was a chassid. Let me tell you a little bit about Abraham. So the Torah tells us that Abraham actually had 10 tests, had 10 trials. He was tested 10 times. Let me tell you what those tests were. Number one, last week's Torah portion, we're introduced to Abraham when God tells him to leave his homeland to be a stranger in the land of Canaan. So the first thing that God tells him is, nice to meet you, get out of here. Right? Number one. And he was like, okay. Number two, immediately after his arrival in the promised land, he's finally traveled across the world. He gets there, and now there's a famine. He could have easily said, what kind of God are you? Seriously? You schlepped me out here? You didn't know that there was going to be a famine? Right? The third one, he now goes to Egypt, where he's trying to find food, and the Egyptians at border control have a very unusual custom at border control. They seize women, wives particularly, and they bring her to Pharaoh. And now that's his third test. The fourth test is when there was the First World War, when I think it was the four kings invaded the land of Israel, and they took hostages. Amongst them was the nephew of Abraham, Lot, which is last week's Torah portion, and Abraham fights a battle against these four kings, defending the residents of the land of Israel. This was his fourth test. His fifth one is when he couldn't have kids, and his wife comes up with this very interesting idea that if he marries the maidservant as a second wife, then maybe they'll have kids. That was an interesting idea. That's this week's Torah portion. Okay. Number six, God tells him to have a bris at 99 years old. What would you do if God told you to have a bris at 99 years old?
I told you, the Chabad up north, which are all Soviet Jews.
Yeah.
Many of them who came over here and now have studied and learned have gotten brisses in their 60s. It's quite a commitment.
It's quite a commitment. It's amazing. It's amazing. Number 7. The king of Gerar this time is another king from a different place, captures his wife and intends to repossess his wife. Okay. Number 8, God tells him, now Hagar has a son, this bad boy, his name is Ishmael, father of the Arabs. And he's noticing some early childhood dysfunctional behavior. So it has an argument with Sarah, and Sarah says, get rid of this kid. This kid should have nothing to do with my Isaac, with my son. So Abraham gets a little bent out of shape, and God tells him, listen to your wife. Whatever your wife tells you, you have to do. Whatever your wife tells you, you have to do. That's a test of Abraham.
You said earlier today that the man had a choice on that.
The man has to say, well, you missed. No, you missed
Well,
it.
that's not what he said.
It's not what I said. You missed it last week.
This is the trial.
Last week was a different class, but what I was saying is that the Torah says that whatever your wife tells you to do, you have to do. You have to listen to your wife's advice. So this is his test. And when his wife tells him to send away Ishmael, boy, was she onto something, okay? Boy, do we know today what she was onto, right? So she was too nice.
That's the cause of all the problems.
Which one?
I mean, every time you listen to your wife, you're in trouble. Adam listened to Eve, trouble. Abraham listens to his wife, trouble.
Why trouble?
You know what?
Why trouble?
Ishmael was Abraham's first. So why? So she's jealous and says, no, forget Ishmael. And now, 4,000 years later, we're still fighting between the descendants of Ishmael and the descendants of Isaac.
What's the problem? She was right.
Maybe she should have said, why don't you treat them equally? Don't make one better than the other.
Well, maybe she should
Treat
have
them the
said,
same.
slaughter him. Don't slaughter him.
Hey, listen, careful. We're not into killing people over here. So,
I didn't say kill him.
If she would have treated them both, if she would have said, let's treat them equally, maybe we would have peace today. Because they would look at each other as equals rather than one.
you know, Abraham wanted to treat them equally. Abraham says, "Lu Yishmael yichya lefanecha." If only Ishmael will live before you, right? He was what? Abraham was very reluctant, but I want to tell you, Sarah. Look, this has to be understood. It's a big topic in and of itself. The dynamic between Abraham and Sarah with regards to Isaac and Ishmael. In general, you'll notice in the whole book of Genesis, there's a tremendous amount of favoritism going on. Typically, it's the younger sibling that's favored over the older sibling. If you think of Cain and Abel, if you think about Isaac and Ishmael, you think about Jacob and Esau, you think about Joseph and his brothers, and then finally you think about Manasseh and Ephraim. Same thing happened, but there finally it worked out. In each one of those relationships, they went from total murder. They went from murder in Cain and Abel to attempted murder in Isaac and Ishmael, to just hate and contempt in the case of Jacob and Esau, to selling as a slave in the case of Jacob, and ultimately Joseph, and ultimately in the case of Manasseh and Ephraim, where he actually forgives him and he says, "Cool, no problem." So they actually develop. Yeah, they actually evolve. But that's a different topic. I don't want to talk about that today. So what I do want to talk about is I do want to talk about.
We're ready for this.
So the ninth test. The ninth test is when Ishmael becomes estranged, and then comes the final test. And that is when God tells him to sacrifice his dear son Isaac upon the altar. And that's in today's Torah portion, which is something which I want to mention to you. It says over here in the portion, it says, Vayhi acharet dvarim haele, and was behold after these things that God says to Abraham, Kach na et bincha et yichidcha, please take your son, your only one, the one that you loved, Yitzchak, and bind him upon the altar. Now, in this experience here, God is pleading with Abraham to offer his son upon the altar. Now, let's be clear, God never asked him to kill his son. You look at the words in the verse, it doesn't say kill your son. It says bind them as an offering upon the altar. That's it.
But isn't that what offering was? The sacrifice?
Yeah, but it doesn't say that you should actually burn him. It says bind him, tie him up. I don't know. It didn't say. It didn't say. It didn't say. There were no specifications. It just said bind him up upon the altar as an offering. That's it. As you would an offering. That's exactly what he said. Now, in these words, when he says please, it's very, very unusual for God to say please to his creation. The Medrash tells us, the Gemara tells us, that the reason why God says please is because what he was saying to him is like this, is that the previous 9 tests with which Abraham is being tested will not be of any value if you don't pass this test. Please pass this test, because if you don't, then people will say, says the Gemara, that the previous 9 tests were of no value. And obviously the question is asked, how could it be that these previous 9 tests were of no value? Now, I read you one version of what the 10 tests were, but there are other versions of what those 10 tests were. One of them, a different version, says that when he was thrown into the fire, what happened was that Nimrod was the king at that time, and Nimrod was a great pagan king, very mighty pagan king, who forced people to worship him as the human god. And what happened was that he heard that Abraham was insubordinate. Abraham was breaking the idols in his father's house. It's a beautiful story. Abraham's father, Terach, was an idol worshiper, and he would actually sell idols. So one day, Terach had to go out of town, so he puts Avram in charge of the store. A woman comes in. She asks for a god of fertility. And Abraham says, then what are you doing here? So she says, well, I came to buy an idol, a nice, beautiful idol that will help me become fertile. So Abraham says, are you out of your mind? Are you going to pay money for a piece of rock that you think is going to make you fertile? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. So she runs off all confused. Now the client comes in, and the same thing happens. Eventually when Terach comes in, the father comes back to the store. He sees the whole store is being broken. He's like, oh my God, we've been robbed. What happened? And Abraham tells him, no, you don't understand. What happened was that I served the food to the idols in the wrong order. And the big idol got food late, so he got upset. So he took the axe and he smashed all the other idols. So Terach looks at him and he's like,
This piece of stone did this?
what do you mean? What are you saying? How could a piece of stone kill the other pieces of stone? So Abraham says, aha, that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. Right? So Terach reports him to Nimrod, and Nimrod has him thrown into the fire. Nimrod says, whoever doesn't believe in me, whoever doesn't believe in idols, has to be thrown into the fire. Avram's thrown into the fire, and miraculously an angel joins him in there, and the fire burns only the ropes that are tying his arms and legs together, and he walks freely through the fire. It was at this point when Nimrod is so impressed by this open miracle in front of so much fanfare, that in front of all the people, that Nimrod actually adopts monotheism for a short amount of time, introducing monotheism, Abraham's ideas, to the world, making Abraham the influential person that he became. Now, the question is, that was a big deal. Even if Abraham would have not achieved the 10th test, which was the binding of Isaac. Even if Abraham would not have even if you'd have said, God, you know what? I don't think that's a good idea. Can we talk about this? Can we have a meeting? Even if Abraham would have said that, would that first test have been of any less value? Why is it that the 10th test, only if you pass the 10th test, will all the previous tests will have been of any significance? A warm welcome to all our guests from viewers from all over the world. Leah in New York, and Corey, Fran in Northern Florida, Rock, Stacy, Stephen Emowitz, I'm not sure where you are, and Rabbi Yitzchak, welcome. Today's Torah study is dedicated in memory of Shalom ben Shmuel, brother of Harvey, in elevation of his soul on the occasion of his yahrzeit today. So, the Rebbe's answer is something very, very beautiful. The Rebbe gives us an answer which really sheds light on our on the way we live our lives today and how we face our challenges, and helps us understand why Abraham is such a deal maker, is such a big deal in Judaism. Here's how it goes. The Rabbi explains that when it comes to the other tests of Abraham, it could have easily been said that he did them because they made sense. So with regards to any of the other tests of Abraham, there was an ability to rationalize each one of them. For example, when Abraham was thrown into the fire, he could have said, look, he could have rationalized it and said, look, my whole life's purpose is to teach monotheism to the world. It's worth it for me for a PR stunt to prove my faith right here, right now, by allowing myself to be cast into the furnace, only in order to prove my life's purpose, to create a legacy for myself. Because if I don't do that, if I reject my own convictions, then of what value will have been my teachings of my entire life?
It's certainly a high risk. He didn't know that an angel was going to jump in there.
Of course not. Of course not. And I don't think, Marty, I don't think that Abraham was expecting to be saved by a miracle. I don't believe that he was expecting that miracle to happen. I believe that what he was doing was that he was showing the courage of his convictions by being willing to be cast into the furnace. Because what would have happened if, when push comes to shove, he says, actually, I don't believe. Everything that he had taught the world until then would have been fake, inauthentic. So there's a way to rationally explain what he was doing. I mean, look at this. He had all the world's media in front of him. This was in the court of the ruler of the world. There was a huge crowd over there, big public relations stunt. This made a lot of sense. On the flip side, in other words, he would have been doing a huge Kiddush Hashem. What does Kiddush mean? Sanctify. He would be Kiddush Hashem. He would be sanctifying the name of God. The God that he believes in, the God that he professes to believe. And now will be his opportunity to say, you see what Abraham did? Wow, we should follow in his footsteps. Yet when it comes to the trial of the Akedah, the trial of the binding of Isaac, who was with him there? Which people were watching this event? Nobody. It was Abraham and his son alone. What is he going to do? He's going to tell everybody, you know how much faith I have?
Look what I did.
Look what I did. Nobody's going to believe him. There was no crowd observing this. Besides, you know what else made no sense here?
It showed Isaac's, how he was walking.
Right. It definitely showed Isaac's faith. That's for sure. He was 36 years old. But think about it this way. 99 years old, Abraham is begging. For 99 years, he's begging God for a child. Finally, God gave him a child. And last week's Torah portion, God promises him, to be a father of great nations and everything else. And he says to God, he's like, what worth is that to me if I'm not going to have a child? What worth is it to me that my servant Eliezer is going to be my heir, and that I don't have a child to be my heir? So God says, at 99 years old, you got it. And now at 135 years old, he's 135 years old. Remember, Abraham lived like 175 years. He's 135 years old. And now God says, by the way, remember that kid that you prayed for 99 years? Bind him upon the altar. Abraham could have easily said, God, I'm not sure what you're smoking today, but whatever it is, this is not a cool idea. He could have easily said that because it defied everything he stood for, everything he believed in. Here I am, I believe in a good God, a God who, God came through at 99 years old. 99 years old. My wife was 90 when she bore a child. As we read today, this morning in the Torah portion, that Sarah laughs. Sarah laughs when she hears that she's going to give birth to a child. Why? Because she's like, these breasts, they haven't seen milk in who knows how long. That's ridiculous. They named him Yitzchak. Yitzchak, which means laughter. Because to be a Jew, by the way, is to laugh at the laws of nature. To be a Jew is to laugh at diplomacy, to laugh at projections, to laugh at trajectories, and to be able to say that despite the odds, we have prevailed and we will prevail. That's what it means to be a Jew. That a woman at 90 and a father at 99 could be. That Israel could overcome almost 30,000 rockets coming from every single direction. This is what it means to be a Jew, to be able to overcome against all odds, to be able to laugh. So here comes this test, which is the first one that makes zero sense. First of all, there's no crowd, nobody watching. Second of all, another major problem that's going on over here is, they're on my desk over there. My keys, yeah. Second major problem is that a second major problem is that this is going to destroy his entire legacy. It's going to destroy his entire legacy. What's going to happen when Abraham's son Isaac is gone? We're back to square one, and the whole world is going to say, Abraham, so tell me about your God again. Your God told you to do what? How does this make sense? Not only does it not make sense, it actually is counterintuitive. It's a bad idea. It's not just that it's not a good idea. It's a bad idea.
But if he's binding his son on the altar, that's not a sacrifice, right?
It turned out in retrospect, hindsight is 20/20 vision. Abraham didn't know that. Abraham thought that he's going to bind him upon the altar, and it's in order to close the deal to set him on fire and slaughter him, right?
But you said that the language says.
In retrospect, what happened at the end of the story, when you read the story in the Torah, in today's Torah portion, you'll see that the angel intervenes and he says, by the way, don't do it. Don't finish the deal.
He thought at the time that he was sacrificing his son.
Exactly. That's what he thought he was doing. The angel said to him, by the way, if you read the fine print, it didn't say to actually kill him. That's what it says. Tell me, challenge.
Page 125.
Go for it.
It says,
Yeah. What does it say?
God says, take him up there as an ascent offering.
Okay. What's the problem?
It's an ascent offering. What is an ascent offering? That's when you burn in the animal to atone for sin.
No, that's not what it says. It says raise him. It says again. Which verse are you on?
It's number 2.
Verse number 2. Okay, in the Hebrew. Verse number 2. Haleo sham leola. Raise him. I'm reading in the Hebrew. Raise him up as a burnt offering.
Oh, there you go.
It doesn't say burn him as a burnt offering. It doesn't say slaughter him as a burnt offering. It says raise him upon the altar. The altar is an elevated space. You pick him up, put him up there. That's what it says. It says raise him up as an offering. It doesn't say to kill him. Yeah, absolutely. So anyways, so back here. So let me just finish this point. So it's now when the fact is defying logic with this particular test that Abraham is like, I don't know what's going on here. Abraham says, God, look, I don't understand anything about what your plan is right now. It actually defies rhyme and reason, but I'm going to go with you, God. It's here that nobody's going to be able to say that Abraham is doing this because he's a nice guy or because it makes sense, but rather because he's fully devoted. He's fully devoted to God Almighty. This is a true believer. You see, I'll give you an example. So here we are. We have this beautiful community, beautiful shul, which is growing in leaps and bounds in the most meaningful, beautiful way. We just finished this most amazing, exciting, exhilarating, invigorating high holiday season, which began with the purity of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. In the middle, we had this global live TV broadcast of October 7th that hit 50 states and beyond. We sent drones off to Israel. We then went off to 3 days later. We started building the sukkah, and we had the most amazing sukkah holidays. And we had sukkah dance parties, and we had Simchas Torah, and we had just amazing stuff. We dedicated to Torahs for the October 7th victims. We moved on into an upsharish immediately after the Yom Tov, and then right into a wedding, right straight into a wedding. And from there, we had 7 nights of celebration. And tonight, last night was the first night that we didn't have a celebration. And it's been like 5 weeks of nonstop, amazing joy and inspiration. And yet, our building's too small. What are we going to do? And I turned to God and I said, God, listen, you know that we could use more space, right? And there's nothing available, at least not yet. And I say, God, listen, I don't know what your plan is. It would be much better for business if there would be a bigger space. I think I can get you more recruits, right? I think I don't understand how you run the operation. Your CFO, Seriously. You could easily say if there's a God, then why would he not be providing real estate
testing us.
to his people? Oh, he's testing us. And I say, God, you know what?
Enough.
Whatever you want.
Enough of the test.
I say, whatever you want. Okay, listen, you tell me when you're ready. I mean, we're praying, we're kicking the tires, we're trying our best. We're trying to, we're looking for the angel investor that's going to want to put down the kind of money that's going to make any deal become available.
Well, like you said, you're in sales, not management.
That's right. I'm in sales, not in management. That's right. So I'm trying to make a sale, but the buyer's got to bite, right? So that's what we're trying to do. I don't understand what's going on. Often it happens, and thank God this is not a existential threat, but there are people that wonder the same thing about Israel. How can God allow war in Israel? How can God allow his people to be under such a barrage of attacks? How can God allow his beloved child to be struggling with such an illness? Why would a person be taken at a young age? And we struggle with these real questions. It's Abraham that inspires us to serve God, not only when it makes sense, but even when it doesn't, because it's the passing of the 10th test that says, you know what? Now I understand why you did the first 9. You didn't do them because it made sense to you. You weren't doing them because it was good for business, because it was popular. You did it because it was the right thing to do, because you're a true believer. And this is really why Abraham is the trailblazer for us as well, because it's critical for us. And we read this portion, by the way, every single morning. In the beginning of the day, right after the morning blessings, you're supposed to read the whole binding of Isaac. You're supposed to read the whole story, because we're supposed to start off our day saying, look, God, or to ourselves, I'm not sure what life is going to bring me today, but even when it doesn't make sense, even when it defies rhyme and reason, I'm still going to remain loyal and devoted to what it is that I need to do. In fact, the angel tells Abraham at some point, he says, Ata yodaiti ki yireh lekimata. Now I know that you're truly God-fearing. Until now, we weren't sure if you were truly God-fearing. Maybe you were just a nice guy. Maybe you were just a people pleaser. And you know some people that they just don't know how to say no to other people. Whatever God asks him to do, he does. He'll go to Israel, There's a famine, okay, so I go somewhere else. My wife is taken captive, fine. He's just a people pleaser. He does whatever God tells him to do. But here, when God tells him to do something which goes against every fiber of his being, the child that he prayed for, this child is being taken away from him by his own hand. It's going to be so bad. You know what are the newspapers going to say the next day? Abraham exposed as a fraud, right? As a murderer, as a killer, as a siblicide, not siblicide.
What is Sarah going to do?
Yeah, and you know what happened to Sarah, by the way, as a result?
God.
The Satan goes to Sarah, and he tells her, "Do you know what Abraham is in the middle of doing?" And when she hears that, she has a heart attack. She dies, right? Which is very, very, very painful, very, very painful. And right there is a part of the story that doesn't make sense as well. Yeah, that's the end of the story. But right there is a very painful part of the story. God, what were you thinking? Does Abraham turn to God and say, God, seriously? You know what? I'm done. He doesn't do that. He says, I'm loyal for you all the way through, from the beginning to the end, through the good, through the bad, and through the ugly. And that's what it means to be a Jew. This is why Abraham is our forefather. This is why we need to inherit this kind of DNA. Yes, he gave us the idea of monotheism. That's right. That's beautiful. But to be a chassid means to be devoted when things make sense and when they don't. Through fine weather and through fair weather. That's what it means to be able to be a chassid, to be devoted to God Almighty.
I like the quote in there that's talked about by Rambam that says a chassid does the truth because it's true.
Yes, he does emes b'pnei shu emes. He does the truth because it's true, not because it's convenient or because it's comfortable. Got a lot of comments coming in here, folks. Robert says, morning, God is bigger than the problem. Good punchline on that video. Okay, good. Brenda, Abra in Ham. What? No, I think she's talking about Ibrahim as like the name of Brahmin or something out there. I'm not really understanding what you're talking about. Sorry. Sorry, I'm not getting that. All right, whatever, doesn't matter. What?
She's referencing the change in his name.
No, she's on something else, doesn't matter. All right. Any other questions, folks? Are you able to serve God when it doesn't make sense? How many people have I met that tell me, Rabbi, what's that? You want me to lay tefillin? You want me to lay tefillin? Rabbi, why? What's the correct answer to that question? The correct answer to that question is it doesn't even matter why. We do it because our Father in heaven asked us to do it. Right? Imagine you said that to your wife every single time she asked you to do something. But why? It doesn't always go that
It
well.
doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. No.
Because I said so.
The way you do it is because the person that you love asked you to do it. Right? You know, I went through the struggle when I was first married. I heard about this thing about buying flowers for your wife, and I was like a whole headache. Like, why do you have to buy flowers every Friday? Dead flowers. Like, why would you such a waste of money? I just bought one week. I got pre-dead flowers. Pre-dead. They were like, the petrified ones.
Dried flowers.
The dried flowers. I was like, yeah, here you go. You got them every week. And I'm ahead of the game.
Guess what?
It didn't go well.
Didn't work.
It didn't work. It didn't go well. Why not? Because she wanted me to buy her dead flowers every week. That's what she wanted. She wanted me to show her that I remembered her, right? That I'm devoted to her, that she's a priority. And that's what she wants me to do. And God is asking us the same thing. And God is testing us, my friends. God is testing us with parts of our lives that don't make sense. When it comes to health, when it comes to wealth, when it comes to politics, when it comes to war, when it comes to other parts of our lives, God is testing us. And if you're the kind of Jew that says, well, I'm not going to lay tefillin today because of the Holocaust, then you're a loser. I hate to say it. I hate to be so crass, but you're a loser. Because imagine if your child said that to you. Seriously, just think about that for a moment. Imagine if your child treated you the way that you treat God. So I treat God. This person says, I will only serve God when he behaves in the right way, when he behaves in a way that I deem appropriate. Imagine if your child said that to you, you'd be estranged from all your children, right? You'd have no relationships with any of your kids. Why would you want that? Why are you setting such a foolish, pathetic precedent? If you actually believe in the master of the universe, you're probably going to come to the conclusion that the master of the universe is a little bit smarter than you are. In fact, a lot smarter than you are. In fact, in an infinite difference where you're not able to understand the wisdom of the master of the universe. And therefore, to be a Jew is to say, I don't believe in a God created in my image. I believe in a God in whose image I was created. Because if you take that former approach, you're going to say, well, when God doesn't make sense, then God is a fool and God doesn't exist. But if you're going to take the latter approach that I was created in God's image, and you're like, look, I don't understand what God is doing, but that doesn't mean he doesn't exist. That doesn't mean that I shouldn't listen to him. And that's the paradigm shift that Abraham introduces us to. Where you might have thought in the first 9 tests that Abraham was being a nice guy. You might have thought in the first 9 tests that Abraham was just doing the things that made sense. But when it comes to this 10th test, the one that makes absolutely no sense at all, Abraham was setting the stage for the future of the Jewish people, a people that would be devoted to God Almighty through fire and water, through light and dark. This is why we say the Shema Yisrael twice a day. We say Shema Yisrael, God is King, God is Almighty on every detail of the universe. That's the meaning of Shema Yisrael. God is one, that there is no other power. We do it in the daytime. It's easy to say Shema in the daytime, when life is good, when things are making sense, when the cash is flowing and nobody's in the hospital. But to say the Shema in the nighttime when I can't see and I'm afraid and I'm cold and it's dark and I don't know who's lurking around the next corner because I'm fearful and I'm anxious. If you can say Shema, then now you're talking. When you say, look, things don't make sense. I don't know where this is going. I don't know how it's going to end up, but I'm still going to say that God is Almighty, that God is one, and God is the only entity that has any power over me. And where this goes is entirely his decision. That is an act of faith, and that is a descendant of Abraham. Comment coming in from Jack. When our moment of existential fear arises, from where do we find the strength and confidence to have absolute faith? What a great question. When our moment of existential fear arises, from where do we find the strength and confidence to have absolute faith? Friends, I'm going to tell you this, that the word faith in Hebrew is not a noun. It's a verb. The word faith in Hebrew is emuna, E-M-U-N-A. Well, E-M-U-N-A. Emuna is the same word which means exercise in Hebrew. Emunim means training, or practice, or exercise. When the army does emunim, it's doing exercises, training. Same word for faith. Why? Because faith is not a destination. Faith is a journey. And just like in the game of golf, Jack, if you don't know where you're shooting, where you're hitting the ball, you'll never get to the hole. If you don't know if you're on the 5th hole, on the 7th hole, if you don't know if it's a par 5 or a par 3, if you don't know if you're on the north course, on the south course, sunrise or sunset, then there's no way you're ever going to get there. Faith is to be able to say, I know where I'm going, even though I'm not already there. Faith is to take the first step, even though you can't see the full staircase. Faith is the acceptance of the fact that this is greater than me, that this is bigger than me, but it's a work in progress, like training. It's a muscle that I'm improving. It's not something which I already have. It's a journey to which I aspire to. And as long as you know, as long as you have Abraham as your light, to be able to say, that's where I'm going, I want to be like Abraham. Then Abraham serves as your star in the shining star in the dark night, to be able to give you direction, to guide your way forward, to give you the strength. Yes, you need a rabbi. Yes, you need to study Torah. Yes, you need to pray as well. You need to work with all of those above to be able to plot your way forward. One foot in front of the other. It's not easy, Jack. It's not easy. But one foot in front of the other, filled with faith and courage and humility and wisdom, you're going to make your way forward to reach heights that you never dreamed possible.